Hello everyone, my name is Spoons Rattling, and welcome to the first episode in my Painting Chaos Space Marine series. First, we're starting with Black Legion, and the first thing we do is we cover all the armor panels with the black paint. I'm using ABADDON black, though you're free to use whatever you like. With Black Legion, the color scheme uses such strong colors that it doesn't really matter if you get it on the trim or anything, because gold paints quite well over black. So, just take your time and go all around to make sure you get all the armor panels, as it'll make corrections significantly easier, because you'll see here in a moment that ABADDON black has a very different finish to the black primer that I used. As you can see here, it's much sort of flatter and has more of a shine to it. But that's the first step. Just make sure you get it all over the armor, and if you get it over anything else that won't be black later, it doesn't really matter, as there's no super bright colors on this armor. So everything's very easy to paint on and easy to correct. Next up is the gold. I used RETRIBUTOR armor, which is a darker gold than something like auric armor. And I personally prefer it for this, as it's a much darker, sort of grittier tone, especially when you wash it down. I used the RETRIBUTOR armor to paint all of the trim, basically, and the casing on his chainsword. Just take your time and go around. Now, when painting the trim, I wouldn't apply much pressure. I would just gently run the brush over the trim, as that'll make it harder for gold to run out of control, and it'll make the splotches easier to fix later, as they'll be less sort of large in area. So here you can see the sped up of me painting this, and from here, this is pretty much all of the armor out of the way. I realized while painting this that Black Legion is one of the easiest Space Marine Legions to paint because of how easy all the colors are to paint, and I realized it's very fun to do that. And so I realized they're a good sort of cover art faction for people getting into the faction. I'd highly recommend this for beginners. They also seem quite strong. But here's what it looks like with all the gold trim painted up, and not only the trim, the shoulder pad as well. Next up is MEPHISTON red, or any red color will work. I just use MEPHISTON red as I feel it's nice and strong. I used this to paint the eyes. As you'll see here in a moment, just brace your hands together against whatever you have the sort of miniature mounted on. I'm using a painting handle from Citadel, but I just brace my hands together and run the paintbrush with just a little bit of paint on in there. It'll get the color down, and then it'll be easier to do a second coat in a moment to make the color stronger, as the color can be a little dull painted over black, but I find it's easier to just paint multiple coats instead of going down the painting white then red, as I feel there's more margin of error using that method. From here we use lead belcher to sort of paint all the metallics that aren't gold. So the grill in his shoulder pad, the blades on his chainsword, the metallic bits of his bolt pistol, and so on. I also used the lead belcher to paint the joints of the armor, as black joints don't really work with black armor unless you highlight them extremely, and this is just for basic infantry. So I used the lead belcher to paint it in, and then later we'll be giving it a heavy wash with NULN oil to darken it down and make it sort of look like it does on the box art, which I think looks quite nice, especially with the sort of jet black armor of the Black Legion. It adds some much needed sort of breaking up of the armor plates to make them easier to digest instead of it all just being one mass of black armor. You'll see here in a moment what that looks like even before the wash right now. I also painted in the Vox grills and of course the inputs and outputs of the jump pack. On a normal Space Marine, or rather normal Chaos Space Marine, you would paint the grills and metallic bits on his jump pack the same way you would the gold, and then the vents you'd paint silver. From here, I did some cleaning up with black and gold again. I did this just to make sure everything was clean, there weren't any sloppy lines or big splotches of gold or black on the trim or on the armor plates respectively. This is pretty much the long and the short of it. You could leave the model here, though of course it'd be a little flat. So the next step is one that we're all familiar with, especially if you're a beginner painter. We're going to be washing this model. Now the washes we're going to use are, I'm sure you can guess, they're going to be a black wash and a brown wash. Specifically, I'm using NULN oil and Agrex Earthshade. Agrax Earthshade for the gold, and the NULN oil for everything else. Agrax Earthshade over gold sort of warms the color and gives it more body, as well as picking out the details as a wash always does. Now, I really like the way this looks, as it just makes the gold seem more complete than just flat gold. Here I am sped up, applying the wash. Just take your time and go all around, making sure you get all the recesses and all the gold itself. From there, you just want to make sure that you let it dry for a sufficient amount of time. I'd say about 10, 15 to 20 minutes, anywhere in that region should be enough. And then here is me using NULN oil to wash the silvers in the jump pack featuring my hand, because I stupidly recorded it in a bad way. Regardless, just run this over all the metal, making sure it doesn't pool anywhere as to not stain too much. Though even if it does, since all these colors are so dark, it's quite easy to fix. So simply, just wash all the silver metallics with the NULN oil and the gold with Agrax Earthshade. Here's me sped up doing that. Just go all around and make sure you got everything, which I actually didn't, as you'll see in the final turnaround. Of course, you also wash the weapons with this. I don't know if I mentioned that already, but I just want to double check and reinforce it if I did already say it. And the gold and the silver here are quite close together, so there's likely to be some spillover, but I don't think it really matters. It adds a sort of greasy look to it. And of course, also wash the Vox grills. And the harness has these little spots in it that I filled with lead belcher. You also want to wash those. And by harness, I mean what holds the power pack on, or jump pack on. And here's pretty much what the model looks like completely finished, except for the base. Now, Black Legion is obviously a Black Legion. Painting the belt. Steel Legion Drab is what I used, though you could use any brown you want. I just thought the Steel Legion Drab would add some nice contrast. And back to what I was saying with basing. Black Legion's obviously Black Legion, so what I used was a sand base, as it adds a lot of contrast. I also painted the helmet Ultramarines as one box art faction versus another. I just thought it was fitting. Then washed the whole base with Agrax and dry brushed with a lighter color, and painted the rim with Steel Legion Drab again. Anyways, if you liked this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to see the rest of this series. Who's up next, you'll have to wait and see, though it is one of the Traitor Legions again, as I'm going to do all 4 of them, and then Emperor's Children a little later, as I need to get pink paint before I can do that, obviously. Anyways, I have been Spoons Rattling. I hope you enjoyed this video. See ya!